I'm not alone in experiencing the effects of my seeing. Lesson 18 in A Course in Miracles, published by Foundation for Inner Peace. Here on the lesson for Saturday, January the 18th of 2025, I'm Forgiveness Willie, teaching forgiveness out of A Course in Miracles from the Ozarks. Glad you've come to join me. Let's do one of our 4 practice periods right now. I'm not alone in experiencing the effects of my seeing. I'm not alone in experiencing the effects of my seeing. I'm not alone in experiencing the effects of how I see that turkey. Now you do it. I'm not alone in experiencing the effects of how I see that. I'm alone in experiencing the effects of how I see that. I'm not alone in experiencing the effects of how I see that. I'm not alone in experiencing the effects of how I see that whatever. I'm not alone in experiencing the effects of how I see that bamboo. I'm not alone in experiencing the effects of how I see that. I'm not alone in experiencing the effects of how I see that. I'm not alone in experiencing the effects of how I see that. I'm not alone in experiencing the effects of my seeing. I'm not alone in experiencing the effects of my seeing. Okay, well, that's one of your practices. We're supposed to do 3 or 4 of those today, if I remember right. Let's read the lesson. We'll just see exactly how many we're supposed to do today. I'd encourage you to read the lesson the night before you go to bed. Have it on your mind when you wake up, and try to do it first thing. Have a little quiet time when you first get up. And then maybe do one of your practice periods right following a little quiet time. I'd encourage everybody to have a little quiet time where you just let everything go. This book, everything. Just let everything go and be still and quiet and see what God has for you. And then do your lesson after you have a little moment of quiet, or before, one or the other. All right, lesson 18 out of the Foundation for Inner Peace version of A Course in Miracles. I'm not alone in experiencing the effects of my seeing. The idea for today is another step in learning that the thoughts which give rise to what you see are never neutral or unimportant. Another way of thinking of neutral is unimportant. It also emphasizes the idea that minds are joined, which will be given increasing stress later on. Yeah, there's only one of us here. We're going to learn to see that more and more. Today's idea does not refer to what you see as much as how you see it. Therefore, the exercises for today emphasize this aspect of your perception. The 3 or 4 practice periods which are recommended should be done as follows. Look about you, selecting subjects for the application of the idea for today as randomly as possible, and keeping your eyes on each one long enough to say, I'm not alone in experiencing the effects of how I see this screen. Or that's just an example. Give whatever your eye rests on. Conclude each practice period by repeating the more general statement, I'm not alone in experiencing the effects of my seeing. A minute or so, or even less, will be sufficient for each practice period. Okay, so 3 or 4 times today for a minute each time. Not asking too much. Okay, let's see. Let's go look in our text reading for today. And we're ready for, and we're still in chapter 2. I think we're the last section of chapter 2. And it's Roman numeral 8, the meaning of the last judgment. Remember yesterday in holidays and observances, it said it was Judgment Day, was the holiday for the 17th. Well, we're going to learn a little bit more what real judgment is all about, and what is God's judgment. One of the ways in which you can correct the magic miracle confusion is to remember that you did not create yourself. You are apt to forget this when you become egocentric. And this puts you in a position where a belief in magic is virtually inevitable. So egocentric, to be thinking just that everything hovers around you and that you're the source of that. I'm not sure the best definition of egocentric, but it's that attitude where you dismiss your connection with others and with God. It's kind of an authority problem. But from that place, he says it's virtually impossible. He says, and this puts you in a position where a belief in magic is virtually inevitable. Magic is the idea that you're going to make something that doesn't have the whole in mind. So that's basically what he's saying. That's what magic thoughts are according to Course in Miracles. There's other definitions, but that's one that the Course uses. Your will to create was given you by your Creator, who is expressing the same will in His creation. Since creative ability rests in the mind, everything you create is necessarily a matter of will. It also follows that whatever you alone make is real in your own sight, though not in the mind of God. So if you're from an egocentric, magical standpoint, you're trying to make something, it'll be real to you, but it won't be real in any true substance because it didn't have God as part of the equation. So he says it also follows that whatever you alone make is real to your own sight, though not in the mind of God. This basic distinction leads directly into the real meaning of the last judgment. Paragraph 2. The last judgment is one of the most threatening ideas in your thinking. This is because you do not understand it. Judgment is not an attribute of God. It was brought into being only after the separation, when it became one of the many learning devices to be built into the overall plan. Just as the separation occurred over millions of years, the last judgment will extend over a similarly long period, and perhaps an even longer one. Its length can, however, be greatly shortened by miracles, the device for shortening but not abolishing time. If a sufficient number become truly miracle-minded, this shortening process can be virtually immeasurable. It is essential, however, that you free yourself from fear quickly, because you must emerge from the conflict if you are to bring peace to other minds. Okay, so we want to emerge from the conflict between love and fear sooner rather than later, so that we'll be some use on this planet. So that we can help, what's he say? So that because you must emerge from the conflict if you are to bring peace to other minds. Of course, you want to have peace in your own mind too. You want to emerge from the conflict for that reason. Remember yesterday we talked about that first you have to know that you're experiencing fear before you can accept the atonement, the remedy for fear, forgiveness. And there's a couple things. There was a near-death experience that I'll just go ahead and tell you about it right now. His name's Robert J. And he talks about how you don't forgive anyone. He learned that you just don't make judgments. Well, that's ultimately correct. So when you listen to his near-death experience, keep that in mind, that he's referring to the type of forgiveness where you really did do something wrong, but you're gonna be nice enough to not hold it against them. And if that's your definition of forgiveness, then you don't want to practice forgiveness. Forgiveness recognizes that you're forgiven yourself for the judgment you made on your brothers and sisters. That's the kind of forgiveness we want to practice, recognizing what they did never did occur, and in a kind of reality that affected anybody. Okay, another thing that he says in this, and I'll put the link to his NDE in the description, but he talks about how, let me get my little notes here. He talks about how we don't want to make judgments, and that I liked one of the saying, it was so close to what A Course in Miracles is trying to teach us. He said, the perfect version of them is in you. In other words, there's some, he talked about, a lot of people aren't going to make enlightenment in this lifetime, and that's okay. They've got their own plan, but the perfect version of them is in you. So you can see it even if they don't see it. He said, don't leave anyone out of heaven. See the perfect version of them. I just thought he really was hitting on the right thing. It's called Actor Died, See Future was Revealed, and says, don't freak out. Anyway, it's 13 minutes and 51 seconds long, and it's on the videos called NDE Diary. Okay, let's go on. Paragraph 3. Anyway, that was Robert J. was his name. I just thought it was a worthwhile one to listen to. And the Last Judgment is generally thought of as a procedure undertaken by God. Actually, it will be undertaken by my brothers with my help. My brothers, so that'd be us. So we're going to be the ones undertaking the Last Judgment. It is a final healing. It is a final healing rather than a meting out of punishment, however much you may think that punishment is deserved. Punishment is a concept totally opposed to right-mindedness. Punishment. Let's remove our mind out of our mind the idea of punishment. He says it doesn't help. It's not right-minded. It's not miracle-mindedness. It's a paralyzing thought. Punishment is a concept totally opposed to right-mindedness. Punishment is a concept totally opposed to right-mindedness. And the aim of the Last Judgment is to restore right-mindedness to you. The Last Judgment, the aim is to restore right-mindedness to us. The Last Judgment might be called a process of right evaluation. It simply means that everyone will finally come to understand what is worthy and what is not. In other words, only love is worthy and fear is not. It's the only perception that has any value. That's your Last Judgment. Again on that sentence, it simply means that let me back it up a little further. The last Judgment might be called a process of right evaluation. It simply means that everyone will finally come to understand what is worthy and what is not. After this, the ability to choose can be directed rationally. Until this distinction is made, however, the vacillations between free and imprisoned will cannot but continue. So the Last Judgment is when you finally get your value systems set up right and you realize that love is love and that's the only thing you ever want to see. He's going to develop that little idea a little more here. And when you recognize that fear is a miscreation and it's not necessary, not needed, it imprisons your will instead of setting you free. Paragraph 4. The first step toward freedom involves a sorting out of the false from the true. The first step toward freedom involves a sorting out of the false from the true. This is a process of separation in the constructive sense and reflects the true meaning of the apocalypse. Let's read it again. The first step toward freedom involves a sorting out of the false from the true. This is a process of separation in the constructive sense, and reflects the true meaning of the apocalypse. Everyone will ultimately look upon his own creations and choose to preserve only what is good, just as God himself looked upon what he had created and knew that it was good. Of course, he's referring there to the creation story where God looked at what he made and said it was good. There in the first chapter of Genesis. I think it's the first chapter. First or second, maybe third, but you're right there at the beginning of the Bible. I'm pretty sure it's the first chapter. Everyone will ultimately look upon his own creations and choose to preserve only what is good, just as God himself looked upon what he had created and knew that it was good. At this point, the mind can begin to look with love on its own creations because of their worthiness. At the same time, the mind will inevitably disown its miscreations, its fear thoughts, which, without belief, will no longer exist. Again on that, at the same time, the mind will inevitably disown its miscreations, which, without belief, will no longer exist. And the last paragraph, paragraph 5. The term last judgment is frightening not only because it has been projected onto God, but also because of the association with last and death. The term last judgment is frightening not only because it has been projected onto God, but also because of the association of last with death. This is an outstanding example of upside-down perception. If the meaning of the last judgment is objectively examined, it is quite apparent that it is really the doorway to life. I think we need to look at things objectively, huh? But last is the doorway to life. In other words, when you die, you're actually entering into more life. That's not what he's actually saying here, but it is. I like to think of death as birthday. You know, you're joining home again. It's like you're getting up, or you're awakening more than what you were when you're going through life, and it's not a loss at all. People on the other side say, "Hey, he's coming home again. Let's have a party." The term last judgment is frightening not only because it has been projected onto God, but also because of the association of last with death. This is an outstanding example of upside-down perception. If the meaning of the last judgment is objectively examined, it is quite apparent that it is really the doorway to life. No one who lives in fear is really alive. Your own last judgment cannot be directed toward yourself because you are not your own creation. You can, however, apply it meaningfully and at any time to everything you have made and retain in your memory only what is creative and good. This is what your right-mindedness cannot but dictate. So we're heading to that place where everything we see is creative and good. That's our right-minded thinking, that we use forgiveness to dismiss the miscreations, the fears, and bring us back to our peace, our joy, our happiness, our love, to see the beauty in everything. This is what your right-mindedness cannot but dictate. The purpose of time is solely to give you time to achieve this judgment. That everything's beautiful, everything is God, everything is good. The purpose of time is solely to give you time to achieve this judgment. It is your own perfect judgment of your own perfect creations. When everything you retain is lovable, there is no reason for fear to remain with you. When everything you retain is lovable, there is no reason for fear to remain with you. This is your part in the atonement. Wow, our part is to look at what we're miscreating and to apply our forgiveness towards it. The atonement, complete forgiveness. Okay, let's see what else is going on around the world. We'll do one more of our song, our practice periods as we close in our song. But before we do, let's see what's going on around the world today. It was my brother Carl Curtis Perkins' birthday today, here on the 18th of January. He was born in 65. He crossed over on April the 12th of 2023. He's in my mind often. I feel like in some ways I communicate with him better now than when we had to use the telephone or, physically get together to communicate. I think now I just think about him and he's there, and we have a good relationship now. Prayer for unity among Christian churches. That starts today and it goes till the 25th. So that's one of the holidays that was mentioned I found on the web. Dawoodi Bohra, which is Dawoodi Bohra, is a Shia Islam celebration in India, also known as Ueus-Syedna, Taher, Saifuddin. So happy Dawoodi Bohra Day to you Shia Islamic people. And it's not just India, but it happens in India, Bangladesh, which our word for peace today is from Bangladesh. The Bengali people, their word for peace is Shanti. So Shanti be with you. Peace be with you. Peking Duck Day. Peking duck it's a dish. I had to look it up. And it's a dish, it's the national dish of China. Bald Eagle Appreciation Day. The Haliaeetus Leosocephalus is the species. Leosocephalus. And the bald eagle, I found out, those things migrate. The young ones, as they get older, they a lot of times just stay in the winter where they're at. I don't know if it's because they get a little more hard-skinned or they just lazy and they just want to stay where they're at. But the young ones usually migrate, but the older ones don't migrate as often. I thought that was interesting. And then the ones that here in the Ozarks usually go down to, down the Mississippi River down to, what's commonly Missouri, Mississippi and Alabama, over into Florida too. And I think they go back to where they were born. Let's see, what else do we have? Soup Swap Day. Make you a bowl of soup and share it with somebody, and let them share a bowl with you them sometime. Get together and have a little party and have different soups to have for supper together. With your Course in Miracles friends, make it really nice, huh? Invite some that don't know anything about Course in Miracles. They can have a soup swap and learn a little bit about Course in Miracles. Maintenance Day and Thesaurus Day. Anyway, I found all those on holidays and observance, or most of those. And let's see. And then out of edible landscaping, we've got another pomegranate I wanted to talk about. And this is the Crimson Sky pomegranate, a Punic granatum is the genus and species. Crimson Sky pomegranate, also called a Nikitsky rainy pomegranate, is called Crimson Sky in the U.S. One of the hardiest varieties from Turkmenistan, planted by Dr. Levin's University of Georgia test plot. At the Dr. Levin's University of Georgia test plot. Crimson Sky ripens its fruit early in October. They are consistently bright red with very appealing taste, sweet and tart. Self-fertile, spaced 10-foot circles, zones 7 through 8. So if you just wanted to plant one of those at your place, you don't need a pollinator, it looks like. It says they're self-fertile. The Crimson Sky pomegranate. Okay, was there anything? Okay, thank you all so much for joining me. And let's go ahead and take one more of our 1 minute practice periods. And we're actually going to get done closer to the time I like to get done. I like to finish these by about 25 minutes. I'm going to be fairly close to that. I'm not alone in experiencing the effects of my seeing. I'm not alone in experiencing the effects of my seeing. I'm not alone in experiencing the effects of how I see. And you fill in the blank. I'm not alone in experiencing the effects of how I see. Look around and say it to yourself. I'm not alone in experiencing the effects of how I see that. I'm not alone in experiencing the effects of how I see that. I'm not alone in experiencing the effects of how I see that. I'm not alone in experiencing the effects of how I see that. I'm not alone in experiencing the effects of how I see that. I'm not alone in experiencing the effects of seeing. I'm not alone in experiencing the effects of my seeing. I'm not alone in experiencing the effects of my seeing. Well, thank you all so much for joining me today. And you know, yesterday after I did my song on lesson 17, a little thing popped up that it was a copywritten something tune or something. I make these songs up, so if there's these are real simple chords and simple melodies, so it is, you know, likely that somebody else has that same song or that same set of notes. I think it's Ed Sheeran had a legal case where he proved, or he won in case in law that that is a common problem, and that people can't really claim a copyright on that. I just wanted to mention that. I'm not making any money on this anyway, so it's not my intention. My intention is to help my brothers and sisters to have some little melody in their mind that they can use to help do these lessons a little easier. Anyway, I'm not alone in experiencing the effects of my seeing. Shanti.